Hello, lovely humans. We are going to look at these placemats and kind of figure out what's happening here in case you need some assistance. So the first thing we're going to do is think about where a 45-degree angle lives in the unit circle. And that one is going to be right about here because we start here at 0 degrees, right? And then up here we have 90 degrees. So about halfway between, we're going to have 45 degrees. So that's the angle that I'm looking at. I'm also going to draw my reference triangle because all of the unit circle is built off of these special right triangles. So I want to keep that in mind as I go through. So this is going to be based off of a 45, 90. That's very obvious in this case because we were given 45 degrees. But remember, after you get out of the first quadrant, you're not going to see things like 30, 60, and 45 anymore. Now you're going to see multiples of those numbers as we move all the way around to 360 degrees over here. So for example, this one's 60, you know where that is. But 315, well, I know down here we're at 270, here we're at 360, so 315 somewhere in quadrant 4. And you need to determine if it's based off of 45, 90, or a 30, 60, 90, depending on where that lands in the unit circle. So that's what you're going to do for those. But in this case, pretty straightforward. It's a 45, 90. Okay, to go from degrees to radians, we take our degrees, 45, and we multiply, that's a bad choice of multiplication, we multiply by pi over 180. So when we multiply by pi over 180, we get 45 pi over 180. 180 is divisible by 45, so we get pi over 4. We're going to leave this in exact form because that is the exact radians as opposed to a decimal that will not be exact. So leave it like that in terms of pi. Okay, what quadrant is this in? This is in the first quadrant. Remember, we have quadrant 1. We go counterclockwise around quadrant 2, 3, and last 4. So these are our quadrants. And then we are going to figure out the ratios. Okay, so this is where we're going to use those leg lengths of our triangle, our special right triangle, to determine cosine, sine, and tangent. Okay, so let's not forget that cosine is, so you're thinking SOHCAHTOA here, right? So cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, adjacent over hypotenuse. So we're thinking about this angle right here, and we want to look for the adjacent and the hypotenuse. Adjacent is going to be here. Excuse me, that would be opposite. Try again. Adjacent is going to be right there. Not opposite, we're doing cosine. So we want adjacent right next to it, touching the same side as that 45 degree right there. So touching right here again. So that's adjacent. And then our hypotenuse is right here. And it's always 1 in a unit circle. So cosine is going to be, we know that all sides on a 45, 90 with a hypotenuse of 1 are square root 2 over square root 2. So cosine is going to be square root 2 over square root 2 all divided by 1, and that's just going to stay the same. Okay, what about sine? Well, now we're going to still start from our 45 degrees here, but now we're going to do opposite over hypotenuse, opposite over hypotenuse. Oh, well, look at that. They're going to be exactly the same. Square root 2 over 2, again, divided by 1, stays the same. Okay, tangent. What is the tangent? So in SOHCAHTOA, tangent is adjacent, opposite over adjacent, opposite over adjacent. So now we're going to have something a little funky. Opposite over adjacent, we get square root 2 over square root 2 divided by square root 2 over 2. Well, that's just 1. Anything divided by itself is just 1. So tangent here is going to just be 1. Okay, things you need to pay attention to. What values are positive? What values are negative? That's what it's talking about over here in this portion. So in this quadrant, cosine's going to be positive, right? We just determined one of those was positive. So cosine is positive in our quadrant 1. Sine is also positive in quadrant 1, and so is tangent because x and y are both positive in quadrant 1. When you head over to quadrant 2, now my x values are negative. So think about that. That's your horizontal distance. All these values here, or your adjacents as the case may be, are going to end up negative. So then you're going to have negative ratios over there for cosine. So think about that with the unit circle where we can have positive and negatives. Okay. On the unit circle, the ordered pair is, okay, so now we're talking about this point right here. Whoop. And what is the ordered pair at that point? Well, we just said we're going to go over root 2 over 2, and we're going to go up root 2 over 2. So this is going to be square root 2 over 2, comma, square root 2 over 2 to find the ordered pair where that 45-degree angle is going to touch the unit circle right there. Hopefully that helps you get through these placemats. Hope you guys are doing well.